Well, Jim, before we wrap things up and get a song or two, just a quick update here at the end of the show on something you brought up much earlier. The new head, I believe, of what will be TBS, or the head of TBS, is a woman named Kathleen Finch. I'm looking at her bio here on the corporate website for Discovery.
Hello, Mrs. Finch.
Finch, before TBS, was the Chief Lifestyle Brands Officer overseeing HGTV, Food Network, TLC, Investigation Discovery, TRVL, I guess Travel Channel.
Travel.
OWN, that's the Oprah Channel, amongst others.
Sounds like the perfect audience for AEW fans. They watch all those programs.
Finch also supervises the Digital Lifestyle Studios Group, responsible for producing video and social content in support of Discovery's digital business. Goes through some of the ratings success. If I scroll down, before joining HGTV, Finch spent 7 years as the Senior Vice President of Programming at the Food Network, where she developed long-running series such as Unwrapped, the Food Network Challenge, and Ace of Cakes. And it goes into her career there, so purportedly, whatever you want to say, this will be the woman in charge of the network that is the home of AEW.
Well, it's reportedly, not purportedly. That's what's going to happen. And we've talked about this in the past, and I've gone on ad nauseum about how easy it is to lose your television and the wrestling business. What's happened when other promotions in other time periods have lost television or got sideways with their network or the broadcaster or whatever. And this, again, yes, Tony Khan, co-owner, part owner of a pro football team that his father owned or whatever. The point is, he's in the pro football business. They're big-time players. They've got, the football team or the soccer team, as we Americans say, over in the United Kingdom. They deal with network television executives and cable TV people. And Tony Khan is able to go to Kevin Riley because they're at a fucking cocktail party. And, of course, since it's been 20 years, Kevin Riley was astonished to know that TBS once owned Vince McMahon's only competition. Well, we could do that again. Oh, you could? Well, let's talk about it. It was that easy because here it's guys out someplace talking about something on TV. Now we think Turner Broadcasting or Turner Television or whatever, we think that was big. Now they're so big, they're a giant multiple conglomerate with network after network after network and holding and holding. And over here in the corner is TBS and TNT. So what Mrs. Finch is, Kathleen Finch, is now it's not going to be Kevin Riley. It's not even going to be the guy that replaced Kevin Riley. It's going to be a woman whose credits include the Travel Channel, Oprah Winfrey, Home and Garden, and Food Network. I don't hear any sports. I don't hear any fights. I don't hear any men's activities. And I know they're not going to completely strip TBS and TNT down of all of their professional sports contracts and everything they show in order to put on a touch of brandy or a spot of brandy or a shot of brandy or whatever the fuck. But it doesn't help you when the person in charge of programming, whether they're the popular station or the popular programs or the unpopular programs or the proven or whatever, it doesn't help you when the person in charge of that programming probably at least has a personal disdain, if not an active dislike, for the kind of programming that they're going to inherit that somebody else put in place for them. And then they start looking for excuses like the naysayers did in Turner Broadcasting the last time. The ink wasn't dry on them buying Crockett Promotions, and there were people in Turner that said, wrestling? Fuck, we got to find some way to get rid of that shit. Until finally a guy came along that was in charge and said, one thing that'll never be on my network's fucking wrestling. And it wasn't. And I heard stories then of all of the comment, and have heard stories since of the comments that people made at the time inside Turner that was just wringing their hands that they had wrestling, that they owned the company and wasn't just showing it, that they didn't even want to do that on television. So now, conversely, while you've got this activity going, hey, maybe she used to be a wrestling fan. Maybe Kathleen Finch was a rat in Louisiana.
Oh, come on. Don't do that.
We don't know.
She doesn't deserve that.
We have no, but I'm not saying she was. I'm not saying she wasn't. I'm saying we don't know. We have no idea. She might be the biggest pro wrestling fan in the world. She might watch Japanese tapes all day long. She might love to see people stand there and invite each other to fucking headbutt them and chop them while they bleed all over the place. She might be, but she might not be. And then she might say, if she saw, for example, if she's doing homework on the networks that she's about to take over, let's say she's home on Friday night with the cat, her daughter, if she has one, or kids, if she has one, I'm sure if she's married, whatever. And she turns on one of her networks, and here are the announcers screaming, "It's a bloodbath," while this fucking guy's spurting blood and this other guy's biting the wound and scraping it before they put each other through some furniture. And she's going, what the fuck is this? And then she delves into this wrestling thing a little deeper and finds out, oh, yeah, on the other show, they just had a guy broke his neck on live television. And then she's going to hear the potty mouth, the Tourette's syndrome that Jericho's leading the charge on, but that everybody has to say shit, son of a bitch, and goddamn
prick
on their program in order to sound grown up and real. And then she's going to be, what the fuck are we doing? Maybe she'll just make changes. Maybe she won't cancel the program. Maybe she'll just bring, I don't know, add to the announcing team on Rampage, Lily Tomlin on color. Or maybe she'll hire Brandy back without Cody to bring a shot of Brandy back as a 30-minute series instead of half an hour of guys kicking each other in the fucking balls. Do you think Kathleen Finch is going to be a pro wrestling fan, or is she going to be purely about the ratings and the money, or is she going to be someone who is incensed at the low-class programming with the blood and the cussing and the spurting about and say, we need to fucking, what would Oprah say? We need to get this shit off our air, even if it does draw ratings. Because again, as we know, wrestling ratings are not looked at in the same way as ratings of other programs, because there's still a stigma coming from television people about wrestling that the wrestling business over the last few years has done nothing to dispel. Vince does. Vince has made it so squeaky clean you can't fucking fart on television, but the rest of the business has gone the other way and done meaningless blood angles with meaningless underneath talent instead of saving it where it would have some impact and it was a calculated risk. Tony's just, they're bleeding and fucking and cussing all over the place over there. And the fans may like it, but the fucking programmers may not. Go ahead.
It could be a little bit of a mix and kind of a USA Network situation where it's, we like the ratings, we like how much money the show makes, especially because it's an inexpensive deal, relatively, the AEW deal with TBS. But we also want to give you notes. We also want to review what you're going to have on the air. That's what I'd be afraid of more than outright cancellation.
Yeah.
Is all of a sudden the executive wanting to be a part of the creative process.
Yes.
Because that's one of the things that people don't talk about hurting WWE. They always want to just blame Vince. But that is one of the big things that hurt WWE was USA Network wanting to be involved.
Yeah. Characters welcome. Well, not at my house. Bonnie Hammer always had ideas and notes and memos and things you could do or things you couldn't do. And before that, remember, I reprinted one of the TBS memos from 1989 in the Midnight Express scrapbook, where they said, there will be no more gratuitous violence on this television program. A show about gratuitous violence. No hitting or kicking or choking or beating or whatever the fuck they said. They did that before. I'm sure they'll do it again. USA has done it with WWE. Unless you were just... The territory wrestling programs in the 70s and 80s were mostly bulletproof because they were the highest rated program in the market, and there were only 3 or 4 stations, and the only time that the station ever got a complaint was if the heel said something, and then the promoter could just fire the heel. Otherwise, they were pretty much bulletproof. Now is a different story. And the wrong person seeing the wrong thing, or the wrong thing happens on the show that leads to bad publicity. Imagine if Kathleen Finch had been the one watching when they went to the pizza cutter shot with the bank-addicted drug robber and old Moxley the plumber. She may have taken that a little bit differently. The needless injuries, the needless gruesomeness on television with no upside, because you're not saving it and doing it in just the right spot, and new programming people always make me nervous about wrestling. So we'll see what happens. But in a year or 2 years or 6 months or whenever, mark this down in your little black book wherever you keep it, Brian, that I said this. We'll see what happens. Home and Garden.
Home and Garden.
Maybe that's Moxley has a future as a landscaper on the Home and Garden Network.